Hello my dear friends and welcome to my channel. My name is Barbara and today we're going to be looking at retrograde planets in your natal chart. This video is for you if you do have a retrograde planet in your natal chart. Actually, a lot of people do because at some point within the year one planet is retrograde or another. So that being said, if you do have a retrograde planet, when the planet does go retrograde in the current time, so unless you're going through Mercury retrograde and you have Mercury retrograde in your natal chart, it's going to be a little bit of an easier energy for you because you are familiar with this energy already. Retrograde planets in our natal chart are going to tell us things that we have to relearn. That's the way that I see it, at least. It's karmic in that sense, where it's like from a past life, you didn't learn that lesson, or maybe you didn't get to complete that goal. You come through in this lifetime and you're like, okay, I'm going to either complete that goal or learn that lesson that you didn't get to complete in a past life. So you're relearning. Now, another thing that I see with retrograde planets as well is that it's going to add a restriction. It adds a restriction to whatever that planet already means, making you different in that sense. Let's say the planet is, actually I'm going to go through all of the planets individually. Otherwise, I'm going to end up saying all of it here in the introduction. Also, one more thing that I do want to mention as well is that the sign and the house is also going to add another layer of meaning, but I'm not going to be going over each of the signs and houses. So let's go ahead and get started with Mercury retrograde. So if you have Mercury retrograde in your natal chart, you are here on a specific spiritual mission. That's the way that I learned about Mercury retrograde. It basically means that you have a specific spiritual mission that you are here to either communicate or write about. Because Mercury does deal with the written or the spoken word, you are going to think differently than other people, and you might be a little bit more reflective as well, because whenever we do go through Mercury retrograde in the transits overall, it is a time of reflection. So you yourself might be someone who is very, very much all about reflection, or you might think about things before you speak about them, or write about them, or communicate them. So this could be something that you guys have to work on and integrate, because you guys might never put your ideas out there because you guys spend so much time thinking about them. Also, Mercury is co-ruled by Gemini and Virgo. So with that being said, because it does add a little bit of a challenge to that planet. When you guys were growing up, maybe you guys had some sort of struggles with your speech, with maybe the way you guys deliver what you are thinking about, maybe even in terms of learning. There used to be this example back in the day where it was like, oh, what color is this carrot? Like it was something like this, where it was like 99% of people are going to like pick one thing, and there's 1% of people who are going to pick the other thing. And it's kind of like the people who are in that 1% group are the ones who think differently. So it's like maybe there's a question on a test or whatever it is, and it's like everyone's going to be in that 99% group where it's like they all understand it the same way, but you guys, it's like that different mind. Okay, you guys think differently, you guys think outside of the box, and you guys can interpret things maybe in two different ways as well. Sometimes that does happen with Gemini energy as well, because Mercury is ruled by Gemini. It doesn't mean that you guys are not going to struggle in school, and this might not even resonate. Not everyone might have struggles with speech or learning when they are growing up, but overall it does add a restriction to this in your life, and it's like you guys are just here to think differently is really what that is, and you're here to share your ideas. Also, what's coming through to mention is some of you guys could be also interested in singing. But keep in mind, because it is retrograde, also, Virgo does deal with perfectionism. Sometimes you guys might struggle to, again, put it out there, get the idea out there. You guys might spend so much time thinking about it and not actually acting on it. So these are a few things that can take place if you have Mercury retrograde in your natal chart. If you have Venus retrograde in your natal chart, the lessons with this particular planet are going to be things surrounding all Venusian things. Love, relationships, sometimes it can be money. Also, it's indulgences, right? Because that's really what Venus does deal with. It's all about our pleasures in life and us enjoying these sorts of things. It is co-ruled by Libra and Taurus. Libra's the beautiful things in life. Taurus is all about the material things, but also enjoying those things. That's really what Taurus is here to learn and meant to master. So for you guys, when you do have this planet retrograde, first of all, you guys might struggle in relationships. You might have a different perception on relationships because once again, there's that retrograde energy. Keep in mind, it doesn't mean that you guys are now doomed in relationships if you do have this placement. It's just connected to your past life. There's a lot of lessons surrounding relationships. So you guys might have to date a lot. You guys might have to really learn yourselves a lot. These types of things until you guys do eventually maybe get into that relationship that you guys are seeking. Now, another thing that also I want to mention with Venus retrograde is you guys might struggle when it comes to indulging and enjoying in a positive sense. Obviously, you don't want to overindulge, but you guys might struggle. So it's like, let's say, for example, just a random example, let's say you have Venus in the second house and it's retrograde. Well, in this particular situation, you guys might make material things. You guys might make a lot of money. You guys might actually thrive in terms of like houses, cars, watches, the whole 9 yards. But you guys might not actually enjoy these things because it's retrograde. So that's a lesson here. You guys are really meant to learn to enjoy, but obviously not overindulge, because sometimes that Taurus Venusian energy can overindulge as well. So these are a few things that can take place when you have Venus retrograde. If you have Mars retrograde in your natal chart, this planet does deal with everything to do with aggression, conflict. It also deals with passion and going after things with your motivation in life. For those of you who do have Mars retrograde in your natal chart, the retrograde energy is going to add a restriction to this. It might make it feel a little bit more challenging to express your anger, to express your interest in something, to actually go after things, to maybe even get motivated. A huge theme for you guys within your life is going to be conflict resolution. Mars is the planet of basically conflict. And when you do have Mars retrograde, you guys might struggle to verbalize this, vocalize this, actually express yourselves in terms of your anger. So With that being said, you guys are going to have this theme happening throughout your life. Theme of learning all about conflict resolution, expressing your anger in a healthy way. The way that I see anger sometimes within the body is that it is a very similar energy to passion. So you want to always take that anger and channel it towards passion. That's usually the suggestion that I do have for people who are heavily influenced by Mars or Aries, or even in this particular case where you do have Mars retrograde for whatever reason. Maybe you're not able to express your anger towards someone. You guys could always write it down. As long as you guys are getting it out of your system, it's really, really important. Maybe exercise could actually help you guys as well. Because otherwise, if it doesn't come out, usually with shadow traits, what tends to happen is it does find a way to come out anyways. So that's basically the theme for you guys is going to be conflict resolution, anger, passion, the whole 9 yards, figuring out a way to get motivated and stay motivated when you do have this particular placement. Because again, that retrograde energy is making that a little bit more challenging. Also, it's going to be karmic in the sense where it's like it's from a past life. So in a past life, for whatever reason, maybe you didn't learn that lesson. Maybe you guys had ideas and projects and things and you guys never took those off the ground. It's very much connected to this. So you come into this lifetime and now it's a little bit more challenging for you because it's like now you're learning that lesson again. That's kind of the idea with retrograde in our natal chart. So these are a few things that can take place if you have Mars retrograde. If you have Jupiter retrograde in your natal chart, what does this mean? Jupiter is the planet of expansion. It's the higher mind, higher learning, higher education, all of these wonderful things. What does retrograde do? It restricts, basically makes it kind of harder. Sometimes the way that I see retrograde energy psychically is like it kind of feels like an uphill battle. Basically like you're fighting against the energy. Obviously, unless it is currently retrograde, currently in the transits, then in that case, the energy is going to be going in your favor. So for you guys, it doesn't mean that you guys are going to be unlucky now because Jupiter is the planet of luck. Overall, what this really does mean is it's going to add a restriction in terms of maybe your belief systems. It's going to make it maybe a little bit challenging to express these belief systems or to learn things. It could make it a little bit more challenging with abundance when it does come to abundance, but it does not mean that you guys aren't going to be abundant. Keep that in mind. We always want to learn these energies that we do have in our natal chart and figure out a way to basically work with them so it is to our advantage. So when you guys do have Jupiter retrograde, you guys might have to work a little bit harder. Here it's really going to depend as to what particular sign you have in here and what particular house it's in, because it's going to give us a little bit more information as to what area of life you guys might be having the struggle in terms of the expansion. And again, knowing this, you guys might have to put in a little bit extra work. And it's fine when you know that you have to put in the work, you know what I mean? The thing is the frustration comes through when it's like you keep trying and trying and trying, you don't understand what the problem is. At least that's the way that I see it. So that's the whole thing here with the Jupiter retrograde. It might restrict this area for you. It's not really a restriction. It's just like the way that I see it is an uphill battle. That's sometimes how I see the retrograde energy. It's kind of like you're constantly trying to work with a force that's kind of against you. But again, I'm not trying to use it in a negative term. I'd like to see things positively in the sense where it's like we can balance this energy if we really figure out what's actually going on in our natal charts. So those are a few things that can take place. Maybe again, when it comes to your schooling or your education, you guys just might spend more time really thinking about what it is that you want to do and where you guys want to go in terms of education and schooling. Again, the higher mind. So these are a few things that can take place if you have Jupiter retrograde. If you have Saturn retrograde in your natal chart, this is going to signify an absence of a father figure early on in life. This could be a mental, emotional, or a physical absence of the father figure. Now, Saturn overall does represent the father. It represents authority, and it also represents all of the things in terms of your discipline and structure. If you really look at it, it's going to be the masculine energy. What else does the masculine energy represent? Your identity, who you truly are at the core, okay? And that solar plexus area, that's the way that I see masculine energy. So when you have Saturn retrograde in your natal chart, first of all, because there was an absence of a father figure early on in life, whoever was that father figure or that dominant masculine role, now within you, you guys might struggle in terms of your own masculine energy. So what does this mean? Discipline, direction, boundaries, having a strong identity, being okay with who you are as a person, kind of doing you and speaking your truth and all these sorts of things. Obviously in the positive sense, sometimes the masculine energy can be a little bit too hardcore and go a little bit too authoritative and too intense and cold if you really do think about it. So you obviously want to have that balanced. But overall, you guys might have no masculine energy. You guys might have no structure within your lives. You guys might kind of feel like you're floating around with no direction. So sometimes with this particular placement, Saturn retrograde, because of this, you guys might find yourselves constantly seeking guidance. So people who maybe go for readings all the time. I mean, there are other ways that this energy can manifest as well in a natal chart. This is just one of the placements, but this is something that could take place. It might be a struggle for you guys to make a decision when you do have Saturn retrograde in your natal chart. If you think about it, the way that the world is, it's very structured, it's very masculine. So you guys might have a hard time acclimatizing to this. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you guys can't do it your own way. It doesn't. It's just going to be you guys figuring out your own structure, your own rhythm, your own routine, all of these wonderful masculine energy traits, because at the end of the day, we all do have these energies within us, masculine and feminine, and at least the way that I see it, a perfectly balanced person is going to be balanced in masculine and feminine energy and kind of diving into those energies when they do require them. So this is if you have Saturn retrograde in your natal chart. Next, we have Uranus retrograde in your natal chart. So if you have this placement, it's not going to affect you as much as the personal placements would because it is an outer planet, but it is still going to have somewhat of an effect on you. Now, what does Uranus mean as a planet? planet. It is ruled by Aquarius, so it's all about being different, your individuality, being unique, rebelling against the norm, being unconventional, doing your own thing, going your own way. Like, this is really that Uranus energy. So when you do have this retrograde energy placed upon here, two things are going to be happening. One of the things is going to be you relearning this lesson in this particular lifetime, doing your own thing, you know, going away from the norm, whatever the norm is. Just being you is really what it is. Because we're all unique at the end of the day, but it's like, it's really, really asking you to express your individuality. And now retrograde here is going to restrict this. It's going to make this area a little bit more challenging for you. You might have challenges expressing your individuality. You might have challenges being unique. You might want to constantly fit in all the time, even if maybe you guys are different, for example. Now, another thing that's coming through to mention is it's going to be very important for you guys to speak your ideas, as different as they may be. It's going to be very, very important to get that throat chakra going. Sometimes I do find that Uranus Aquarian energy, they do have the throat chakra shut off because their ideas are so different that, first of all, the collective might not be ready necessarily for the ideas. So for this reason, you guys might have to exercise that throat chakra even more. Spread your ideas. Constantly say what's on your mind, even if it is different, because that's really what makes you you. So this is going to be a huge lesson for you guys when you do have Uranus retrograde in your natal chart. If you have Neptune retrograde in your natal chart, Neptune is the placement of illusion and delusion. Sometimes it's going to be the placement that does connect us to the other side, metaphysical planes, all these sorts of ideas, the psychic gifts, the intuition, all these sorts of things. So when you do have retrograde in here, you might actually have a challenge to actually express these ideas that you have, the intuition, the psychic gifts. It's kind of like it almost adds even more of like that restrictive energy on top of what Neptune already is. If you think about it, Neptune already is you trying to figure out, okay, this is my psychic insight, this is maybe somebody else's energy, like these types of things. It's basically that energy between like your psychic world and your psychic intuition and figuring out all of that. It's kind of like that fog energy is how I really see Neptune sometimes, where you're really trying to like sift through and figure out, okay, what's this idea, what's that idea, and trying to basically clear that energy. Sometimes I see it as an excess of crown chakra energy is really what that is when people have a lot of Neptune energy in their natal chart. So I have retrograde on here, double of this, even more of this, even more having to sift through. I am psychic, I am intuitive, I have these sorts of things coming through. How am I going to act on them? That's really what it is. At the end of the day, a lot of the time I do see intuition as something that is just for us. It's something that basically equips us for survival. I mean, we all have a gut instinct. It's just we call it a gut instinct. We don't really call it intuition. But you guys are really here to master that area of your life is really what that is. Figuring out your psychic gifts and abilities, how to apply them, what they are, learning to decipher between the different worlds, the physical world, the psychic world, and how to apply them. Another thing that's coming through to mention actually for this particular placement is you guys might have a hard time acting on your dreams, your actual dreams, like you have a dream for yourself, not the sleeping dreams. The dreams that you guys have for yourselves, you guys might have a struggle acting on them because again, there's that push-pull energy where it's like there's an excess of crown chakra energy is the way that I see it. It's almost like a fog. So you guys might spend a lot of time having to decipher and again, pull things out and figure out what's actually going on, what's actually your dream, or did you pick up on other people's things? Honestly, I mean, I could talk about psychic things all day long, but I do think that sometimes because we are telepathic, sometimes I'm like, was this actually my idea? Or am I just picking up on somebody else's idea that's like within the vicinity? Anyways, that's a different video for a different day. But that's kind of the idea here when you do have Neptune retrograde in your natal chart. If you have Pluto retrograde in your natal chart, for you, it's going to be very challenging to go through transformations. That's the way that I personally see Pluto retrograde, at least, is for this individual when they do have Pluto retrograde going on in there. Pluto's all about changing, transformation. It's really going to depend on what sign and house you have in here. It's going to give you a lot more information what area of life you guys might have these challenges in. But overall, the whole idea here is that whatever house you have it in, you have the retrograde going on. So the retrograde is going to give you challenges in that particular house. For example, let's say it's in the first house and then you have it retrograde. You guys might have a hard time changing your ways because again, also it is Scorpio energy undertone. When you have Pluto in the first house, it's having the undertone of having a Scorpio rising. So for this reason, it's like you guys might have even a harder time to basically change your ways because it's like already Scorpionic energy is very much like set in their ways when they figure out what actually works for them because they are a fixed energy. So this is kind of just an example, but this is going to be throughout the different houses, whatever that house means. You guys have retrograde, you guys are going to have a hard time changing your ways in this area, going through transformations. Sometimes these areas are actually meant to help us transform. Let's say you have Pluto in the second house, you're going to go through transformations through finances in your life. When you have retrograde, you might have a hard time to accept these changes. Maybe it's going to be things like switching jobs. Maybe let's say there's a new job with like a higher pay, but it's like completely out of your comfort zone. You guys might have a hard time to actually accept that job, for example. I'm sure you guys are following and catching my drift with how Pluto retrograde works, but this is the overall idea. So whatever house you have it in, the sign is going to give you also a little bit more insight, but usually the house is the area of life that you guys are going to have a hard time accepting and going through these changes when you have Pluto retrograde in your natal chart. So my dear friends, I do hope you guys enjoyed my video on the retrograde planets in your natal chart. If you did, please do like, share, and subscribe, and I hope you all have a beautiful rest of the day.